Welcome to part 2 of our live training session here with our drag race Honda S2000. This tutorial we're going to continue on with our base map creation process. We're going to be setting up some 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional tables such as fuel and spark timing. We're going to make sure that everything is in order for us to fire it up and begin our tuning process in our next tutorial. Without further wait, let's jump in so we can check this out. Welcome back to our live training session here with our drag race Honda S2000. Our last tutorial we focused on setting up our basic general settings and our inputs and some basic outputs here for this vehicle. So we've configured the CAN details, we tied in our AIM dash on the CAN network to our link, we've tied in the output data from the AIM dash. So we have analog CAN signals or CAN channels coming into our link box, fuel pressure, oil pressure, coolant pressure, exhaust manifold pressure, and our AEM trim pot. They're all being broadcasted over, and we also brought in that wheel speed data from the OEM ABS CAN bus network. So we've configured all that. So now we're ready to go in and configure our tables, fuel tables, spark timing tables, knock control, idle control, on and on. There's a lot to configure and left that we need to do here to finish building out our base calibration file. And I'm breaking down these tutorials so they're a little bit more manageable in terms of the content that we're going through here. I'd like to go into things as in depth as possible. So I'm trying to go in, stretch out these videos and making sure that we're covering things very specific so there's no confusion as we're trying to build everything out. And you can replicate this on your own. That's really the goal here as you're watching these tutorials. So what we're going to do here is start from where we left off in that last tutorial, and that here is the output page. Let's go and start to move through the different tabs and start to build out these tables and the areas that we haven't already populated yet. So sitting in the vehicle right now, the ignition key is off. I am in the offline status. We can see up here at the top, offline. Once we've built out the file and went through and set everything up, we'll go and connect to the box. We'll send the file to the box and we'll do a store, and then that'll be pretty much it for the base map creation process. The next tutorial will focus on getting the engine to fire up and run, setting up and configuring our drive-by-wire settings, checking the timing with a timing light, getting our fuel sorted out and spark timing sorted out, all at idle conditions so we can crank fire and run the engine. That's the goal of the next tutorial. We're taking things in small, manageable segments so that you're able to do this on your end of things. Cannot stress that enough. We don't like to go in and just leave things out. I like to be as continuous as possible and as clear as possible in what I'm showing in these tutorials. So let's jump in here. Let's pick up where we left off at here in the outputs page. Let's move across here into our CAN bus page. We're not doing anything in the CAN bus configuration. We've already taken care of that in the CAN streams, the CAN framing, so we don't need to do anything here. We're not running a CAN keypad for any touch functions. This vehicle is pretty basic. It just has the on-off on the ignition key, and we have some basic switches in here to toggle through the AIM dash, and that's it. We really try to keep this car simple as possible. This car really, it was running an 8-second quarter mile pass, several 8-second quarter mile passes on the factory ECU using Flash Pro to flash the factory ECU, and this is the next evolution of working with that. So we're still running an OEM harness, but now we have a boom slang harness that's a jumper to the link, and we're going through all of this. So this car is really minimal. We don't have a CAN keypad, so we're not doing anything in here. The mixture page we're not going to do anything with yet. Let's go jump into our fuel page. Now here, we need to go into our fuel table, into our target lambda table, and into our injection timing table, and go and configure these. Now, in the last tutorial, I introduced the concept of using the import file function to build out a table. We did that for the injector data. We did that for the coiled well data. We're going to be doing that for all of the other tables here. This is going to give us a rapid way to generate a base map, and then we can go and tweak and adjust the breakpoint axes as needed. I'm not going to be spinning this engine past 9,500, but I'll put a breakpoint right around 10,000 RPM. I don't anticipate seeing this go much higher than 60 pounds of boost, so I'll put a breakpoint in my MGP table right here, going out to 400 MGP, which is equivalent of 60 PSI of boost at sea level conditions. And we're pretty much going to be racing this car at sea level, so that's how I'm going to configure things. So I always want to go in and put a breakpoint a little bit beyond the max RPM and then the max load that we anticipate running. And looking at our MGP, this is manifold gauge pressure. This is literally taking map pressure minus barrel pressure. That's how we're getting these values in here. So at 100 kPa, that's sea level, 100 kPa of barrel pressure, we should have 100 kPa of manifold pressure. 100 minus 100 equals 0. That's where the 0 comes from. And if we're taking a look here in vacuum, if we're drawing low vacuum, let's say we're pulling 20 kPa of engine vacuum, it might be in deceleration conditions, and the barrel pressure is 100, we'll end up with map minus barrel, it'll be negative 80. That's where we get a value here, something like negative 80. That's our vacuum. And then as we get into positive manifold pressure, 100 would signify 200 kPa of manifold pressure, or equivalent of 15 psi of gauge pressure reference in imperial units. So that's how we can kind of interpret this, but we need to go and scale for big boost for this car. So what I'm gonna do right now is build out this file. Now this table, we've introduced modeled fuel mode, which is going to be our volumetric efficiency based style fuel strategy. This is going to allow us to essentially represent the cylinder filling in our table. This table represents the estimated airflow coming into our engine. This would be the equivalent of having a mass airflow sensor directly measure the air mass coming into the engine, but in this case, this allows us to estimate it. So we want these values to be as accurate as possible when we're dialing things in. We have some marker points at idle, and we'll cover that in the next tutorial when we get the engine to fire up and run and sort out our fuel and airflow model in idle conditions. There are some things we can look at to determine if we need to go adjust our VE table or our injector data. And I'll explain that further at that point in time, but we need to build a table out here so we have something to work with. Now this table wouldn't work for this particular engine. We're revving close to 10,000 RPM, so the RPM breakpoints won't work, and we're finding here we're going to be going up much higher in our manifold gauge pressure, or essentially our load or boost reference. So we need to go and right click here. We're going to go into, let's actually click right here on the upper portion of the table. We'll right click, and we're going to go in here to import and go into import from file. Now this is where you can go into your course folder and grab these specific files that I'm working with here, saving you a tremendous amount of time. You might have to change your breakpoints, as I was just describing. These breakpoints in that table, the default table, aren't going to work, and the breakpoints in the one I'm importing aren't going to work, but it's going to give me a good starting point. So I'm going to go in here and select. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.